Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier, and thank you again for stopping by. I went back and looked for the MindSpeak session with President Paul Kagame that we hosted some years ago in Kigali, and the link is at the top of Rich Wrap-Ups. Do take a look and a listen. Very interesting, very determined individual, and their mind share, their share of voice is huge for a country of that size. UNEP Sanda Ojiambo, who co-hosted MindSpeak with me on Saturday, made a presentation which we filmed, and it's well worth having a listen to that as well. Very powerful intervention. Macro thoughts, the Standard Chartered Bank market outlook, economic outlook is seen in this video, which is a presentation by Razia Khan. She looks around the world, but with a bias towards Africa. Again, very accomplished and extremely worthwhile to listen to there as well. Home thoughts, how to watch this week's super blue blood moon. Rare super blue blood moon is set to occur this Wednesday, January the 31st, and stargazers are right to be, excuse the pun, over the moon about it. To understand their excitement, you'll need to understand what's happening exactly. Even though the phrase once in a blue moon suggests they are rare, blue moons, the second full moon in a 1 month period, are relatively frequent, taking place once every 2.7 years. Supermoons are full moons that occur at the closest possible point to Earth, making them appear slightly bigger and brighter, about 14%, and grace us once every 14 months. And blood moons, also known as total lunar eclipses, take place about twice a year, when the moon passes through the Earth's shadow, turning it an eerie copper-hued colour. But to have all these three happen at the same time, it hasn't happened since 1866. Channel 4 News in a clip, these ancient bones prove humans left Africa 100,000 years earlier than we thought. That made me think of Don DeLillo, where the last billionth of a second in the evolution of matter. That's from Point Omega. The true life is not reducible to words spoken or written, not by anyone, ever. And finally, the less there was to see, the harder he looked, the more he saw. I like these two photographs from destination Tanzania. First, trekking the Kilimanjaro mountain, Africa's highest peak, that's Alex Aikens. And then this one, sunset ball game, Stone Town, Zanzibar, Tanzania, Vincent Oisver for National Geographic Photo Contest. Didi posted this photograph, New York. And this is a close-up by Jamie Taris capturing the touching moment an infant orangutan lays its small hand in the hand of its mother. Political reflections, the world in 2018, societies fractured by knife-edge votes that produce binary outcomes. That's a powerful comment. Rohitesh Dhawan describe the world in 10 words or less. Societies fractured by knife-edge votes that produce binary outcomes. Particularly good. This would be funny if it wasn't so serious. Take a look. Theresa May negotiating with Angela Merkel. In the midterms, Democrats are well positioned to bring one-party government in Washington under Trump's presidency to a screeching halt. The IS group claims attack on Kabul military compound. AFP, this picture was taken by COSAR at the site of an attack near the Marshal Fahim military academy. And it's not my imagination, but the spike is simply off the charts in Afghanistan over the last few weeks. India takes fight to China via Southeast Asia, Asia Times Online. In what has been described as the most significant exposition of its Act East policy, India invited Southeast Asian heads of state as its chief guests during its recent 69th Republic Day parade. The commemorative summit, held on January 25th, themed Share Values, Common Destiny, arguably marked the arrival of India as a major force in the broader Indo-Pacific theatre. The event was held against the backdrop of a revived and still emerging India, United States, Japan and Australia quadrilateral strategic arrangement aimed at counterbalancing China's ambitions in the region. Under its Act East policy, previously known as Look East, India has recently doubled down on its trade, investment and strategic relations with East and Southeast Asia, home to some of the world's most dynamic economies and source of the natural resources, technology and markets needed to fuel its own fast growth. The rise of China and perceived threats to India's interests has reinforced New Delhi's hopes of deepening its cooperation with key regional actors, including ASEAN. The economic stakes are high. Over the past year, India's trade with ASEAN expanded by 10%, rising from $65.1 billion to $71.6 billion. While a positive uptrend, the numbers still pale in comparison to China's $452.31 billion in trade with ASEAN countries in 2016. That's the main point. During his speech before ASEAN heads of state, Modi identified humanitarian and disaster relief efforts, security cooperation, and freedom of navigation as key areas for maritime cooperation. I conclude by saying China has India surrounded from the Doklam Plateau to Gwadar port in Pakistan and the Hambantota port in Sri Lanka. In a piece I wrote August 2017, China Rising, I said China has established control over the South China Sea. It has created artificial islands and then militarized those artificial islands across that same South China Sea. It is a mind-boggling geopolitical advance any which way you cut it. China has advanced its footprint in Pakistan, where it has leased the Gwadar port for 43 years. Sri Lanka, which gorged on Chinese debt, has had to disgorge the Hambantota port to its creditor. And recently we saw China formally open a military facility in Djibouti. When you take all these moves together, it speaks to a material Chinese advance. The pivot to Asia, which was supposed to contain China, is dead. Now you've got this new idea of this quadrilateral, and China has sprung that trap. China is also in Narendra Modi's face in the Doklam Plateau, I said, which sits in the tri-junction region of Bhutan, China and India. It's as if Xi Jinping is goading Narendra Modi, and I said at that time he would have been seriously ill-advised to take on the Chinaman in that remote plateau. The President of the United States is asked if he believes in climate change. This is his answer. Libération had some interesting photos of the Rohingya and the sea. Take a look at them. Pete Souza is the classiest troll of them all. He posted a photograph of President Obama with Jay-Z. Bitcoin price data, last trading around 11,000. Interestingly, hacking cryptos looks more profitable than mining cryptos. Japanese financial regulators said it would inspect all cryptocurrency exchanges and ordered CoinCheck to get its act together after $530 million cryptocurrency theft. Bloomberg Technology has a very interesting and detailed article on this theft. How to launder $500 million in digital currency is the headline. Early Friday morning in Tokyo, hackers broke into a cryptocurrency exchange called CoinCheck and made off with nearly $500 million in digital tokens. It's one of the biggest heists in history, with the exchange losing more than 500 million of the somewhat obscure NEM coins. The hackers raised questions about security of cryptocurrencies around the world. CoinCheck hasn't disclosed how their system was breached beyond saying that it wasn't an inside job. The company did own up to a security lapse that allowed the thief to seize such a large sum. It kept customer assets in what's known as a hot wallet, which is connected to external networks. Exchanges generally try to keep a majority of customer deposits in cold wallets, which aren't connected to the outside world and are thus less vulnerable to hacks. CoinCheck also lacked multi-signature security, a measure requiring multiple sign-offs before funds can be moved. That's one of the, where do these coins go? That's one of the stranger aspects of these heists, because transactions for Bitcoin and the like are all public. It's easy to see where the NAM coins are, even though they're stolen. CoinCheck has identified and published 11 addresses where all 523 million of the stolen coins ended up. You can see for yourself online. Trouble is, no one knows who owns the accounts. Each one has been labeled with the tag that reads CoinCheck stolen funds, do not accept trades, owner of this account is a hacker. Can't make this stuff up, can you? It's quite extraordinary. This goes back to something I wrote on the 8th of January, the crypto avocado millennial economy. I should have added in hummus to that mix, because there's a chickpea crisis. The price of hummus has soared in the UK, up about 33%. Bond scale like in 2015 coming up, asks JS Blockland. This goes back to something I wrote very prematurely. September 2016, mirrors on the ceiling, the pink champagne on ice. 10-year US Treasury yields hit 270 for the first time in nearly 4 years. 12th of September 2016, last thing I remember, I was running for the door. I had to find the passage back to the place I was before. Holger says the beginning of the end of negative interest rates. Germany's 5-year bond yields turned positive for the first time since 2015. In that article that I wrote, I said if volatility spikes, positions are going to be reduced en masse, or to put it another way, and to borrow the lyrics from the Eagles song Hotel California. Currency markets: euro dollar 123.66, dollar index 89.41 is trying to fight back here. Dollar yen 108.73, Swiss franc 0.9374, the pound 140.41, the Australian dollar 0.8070, Indian rupee 63.75, South Korean won 10.7226, the Real 315.52, Egyptian pound 17.6840, and the rand back to close to 12 at 11.9813. Dollar index, quite a few people are looking for a big trading bounce here, which we could get. Euro dollar 123.67. I think looking to drop another 60 cents, but we're going to go towards 126. Music still playing, Euro speculators still dancing. That's Jamie at Reuters. The euro is enjoying its best start to a year ever, and the momentum has taken it above 125, encouraging hedge funds and speculators to add to these bets, not reduce them. Cumulative bet size is $22.245 billion on the euro going up. And then he quotes City boss Chuck Prince in July 2007. When the music stops in terms of liquidity, things will be complicated. But as long as the music is playing, you've got to get up and dance. We're still dancing. Gold, that's come a little bit off its recent highs, 1335 last, might be correcting lower down to about 1300, but let's keep an eye on it. Brent fell below $70 a barrel, higher prices apparently generating a shale response in the US. WTI crude oil $64.80. You know, my targets were hit, $70 was my target at 65. WTI, so again, I'm inclined to think we're going to pull back a little bit stronger dollar. This is the camp of Al-Imam al-Hussein, Kerbala in Iraq and on the Silk Road. China calls AU spying report preposterous. China's ambassador to the African Union Monday denounced as absurd A report by the French newspaper Le Monde alleging that Beijing has been spying on the continental body. The report published last week claims technicians at the body's headquarters in the Ethiopian capital discovered last year that the contents of their computers had been regularly copied to servers in Shanghai since 2012, citing several unnamed AU sources. I think the report is a sensational story, but it is also preposterous and absurd, that was Chinese envoy Quang Weilin said on the sidelines of the AU summit in Addis Ababa. The AU leadership did not address the report in their opening remarks on Sunday, and Ethiopian Prime Minister Haile Mariam Desalegn, and the Economist calling for his resignation in a very short period of time certainly caught me off guard, downplayed Le Monde's findings. There is nothing to be spied on, I don't believe it, he said. 73% of the African Union's budget is funded from outside the continent, that's Celestine Monga. About 30 of its 55 members default either partially or completely on average annually. Talking about independence, credibility and dignity, a lot of work ahead for all of us, he said. The African Union accuses China of hacking headquarters. This is a report by John Aglenby in the Financial Times, Emily Feng and Wan Fan Yang. African Union officials have accused China of hacking its headquarters computer systems every night for 5 years and downloading confidential data. Beijing funded the AU's $200 million building in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, while a Chinese state-owned company built it. Analysts said the fact that the hack remained secret for a year after being discovered and the AU was not commenting publicly demonstrated China's dominant relationships with African states. The data theft was exposed by French newspaper Le Monde Afrique and confirmed to the Financial Times on Monday. China denied the accusation. The hack underscores the risk African nations take in allowing Chinese technology companies such prominent roles in developing their telecoms backbones, despite the US placing restrictions on investment by Huawei and ZTE. The two companies have built most of Africa's telecoms infrastructure, according to a McKinsey report. Le Monde reported that data transfer activity was at a peak every night between midnight and 2 a.m. from January 2012, when the building was inaugurated, to January 2017. AU technicians discovered the organization's secrets were being copied onto servers in Shanghai, according to the article. The AU has now acquired its own servers, and all electronic communication is now encrypted and no longer passes through Ethio Telecom. Other enhanced security features have also been installed. I said the hack was really alarming because it exposed that African countries have no leverage over China. I said there's this theory in Africa that China is Santa Claus. It isn't. Our leaders need to be disavowed of that notion. China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs denied the hacking allegations, calling the reports baseless and complete nonsense. China would in no way interfere with the internal policies of African countries or do anything that would hurt their interests, it said in a statement. However, a Western diplomat based in the region said the AU should not have been surprised, considering China built and fitted out the 19-story building that dominates the Addis Ababa skyline. When you let them build the whole system, of course they're listening in. Concerns about technological backdoors in Chinese tech hardware led US policymakers in 2012 to recommend blocking acquisition attempts from ZTE and Huawei. Le Monde also reported that GCHQ, the British government listening agency, had intercepted communications between AU and UN officials in 2009 and 2010, citing documents released by whistleblower Edward Snowden. My piece in August last year was China Rising. Congolese President Kabila held a rare press conference of intentions. He's quite an extraordinary fellow. The whole place is falling apart, and he's still, imagining it's all fine outside his presidential walls. Photo of the day: sky view of the landscape of Masisi territory in the DR Congo. That's by MONUSCO. Our economy is broken, our government is broke, our currency is in free fall, inflation is rising, George Weah. Unemployment is at an unprecedented high and our foreign reserves are at an all-time low. view of the very rapidly deteriorating situation of the economy, I'm informing you today with the immediate effect that I will reduce my salary and benefits by 25%. I'm sorry to say, but I've never seen a political elite with so little interest in the well-being of its own people. This is UN Security General Gutierrez, Secretary General telling African leaders speaking on South Sudan. My piece over the weekend was about Davos, Eric Solheim, and an outstanding investor relations effort out of South Africa. Haile Mariam, Egypt's Sisi, and Sudan's Omar Hassan al-Bashir had discussions on trilateral issues of mutual interest yesterday. Ethiopian oil refinery proposes Blackstone-backed line shelved. This is something that Fairfax Africa Fund are looking at, 120,000 barrel a day plant. Meet South Africa's king of tombstone bling, that's from the BBC. South African oil shares come off record highs and still up 2.19% year to date. Dollar rand nudging that 12 level. The headquarters of our national election organization, that's Ahmed Souef, it's Egypt. Egyptian pound 17.6840. Nigerian oil share up 15.85% so far this year. The Ghana Stock Exchange overtook it and is up 17.61%. The opposition just announced that Raila Odinga's swearing in is to start at 8 a.m. tomorrow, which is today at Uhuru Park. People told to arrive by 7 a.m., but it hasn't 7 a.m. or even 8 a.m. Well, didn't seem to be much going on. It remains a strategy of tension, but it's ultimately a political cul-de-sac, in my view. Editors Guild accuses President Kenyatta of gagging media over the coverage. It's condemned direct threats by the Jubilee government against the media. In a written statement, the Guild accused President Kenyatta of threatening the press over the coverage of the ongoing political events in the country. As I said yesterday, I think, you don't need a sledgehammer to crack a nut. So there's been this dispute. If you're interested in an outlook on Kenya, have a listen to Lamin Manjang, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Standard Chartered here in East Africa. And he also announced that Standard Chartered will channel $20 billion in the next 2 years towards financing infrastructure projects under the Chinese state-led Belt and Road Initiative, with half of the signed deals being in Africa. The Eurobond, take a look. I expect them to issue a 10-year Eurobond. The current tenure, which is now 8 years, yield is 5.67%. Nairobi all share up 5.82%, less than 0.5% off an all-time high. NSE 20 up 0.75% year to date. Mumias on edge as 3 banks recall 2 billion shillings worth of loans. If you're interested in that particular share, final link on Rich Wrap-Ups is for that share price data. Once again, thank you for stopping by.